Hi. I'd like to address something that comes up here in Parashat Devarim, a somewhat unique or unusual phenomenon in the Torah that maybe not everyone's noticed before. We have a phrase, Yikru'u lahem, that the Torah a few times, Moshe Rabbeinu in his opening speech gives alternate names, tells us about first a few nations and then about a place, that the alternate names by which they were called. And wanted to address some possibilities as to why this gets Moshe Rabbeinu's attention, why he brought it to the attention of the Jewish people, and maybe why it's deserving of our attention. So first in Perek Bet, he mentions a few nations. Perek Bet pasuk Yud Aleph, Refaim yechashvu afhem ka'anakim, v'Moavim yikra'u lahem emim. The Refaim were considered like Anakim, maybe like giants. V'Moavim yikra'u lahem emim. The people of Moab called them a different name, Emim. Skipping ahead a few psukim to pasuk Kaf. Eretz Refaim techashev afi. The land of the Refaim was also significant. Refaim yashuv alefanim. Well, and the people of Refaim who dwelled there, Ammonim yikru'u lahem zamzumim. The Ammonim had them a different name for them, the zamzumim. So again, in the Torah we don't very often find, the phrase is very unusual, that the Torah doesn't usually give us an alternate name for a people, for a place. And the Mepharshim have very little to say about the Ralbag suggests la'amet lahem to authenticate, to explain, to speak of the truth of it, and it does address that, but it sounds almost like a tour guide, or like a historian, and there's an element of that, and we'll come back to that in a moment. I was discussing this with Professor Yoni Grossman, and he suggested that maybe for these first two references, we'll come back to a third reference in a moment, that perhaps the Torah is hinting at Perek Yud Dalet of Sefer Breshit, of the War of the Four Kings and the Five Kings. And I'll read one pasuk where it mentions three of these names. We're not going to go into the whole background of the story there, but just listen to the next couple words. The Refaim, the Zuzim, which he suggested may be similar to the Zamzumim, and the Emim are all among those who were smitten by Kedar Omer, the head leader of the alliance of the four kings, were all smitten in the battle of the four kings against the five kings, after which Avram came and led the battle to redeem Lot. Interestingly, if you look back in our parak, in Perek Bet, indeed, in the psukim that I skipped between Yud Aleph and Kaf, interestingly, there in that parak, Avram went to save Lot, and here we see that there's significance to the inheritance of Lot. But more interestingly, I think if the Torah is hinting that we look back at that story of Avram battling the four kings and the five kings, and fighting a battle here in this part of the world, it probably is to hint more at the psukim that are coming up later on. That what is Moshe really getting at in this speech? That Hashem is putting the fear of the Jewish people over the surrounding nations, and what better way to exemplify that in one of the very few battles we can refer back to as of Sefer Devarim, which is the battle of Avram on his own with his 318 men, going out and in a single night defeating four powerful armies to save his nephew Lot. And that presumably is some of what he's trying to hint at in a very subtle way here in Perek Bet. So perhaps it's not just alternate names, but a very subtle literary reference or subtle reference to these other nations. If we skip ahead to Perek Gimel, we have a different reference. Sidonim, Perek Gimel pasuk Tet, Sidonim yikru leChermon Sirion, v'Amori yikru lo Sinir. Two references, a few different names for the mountain we know today presumably as Har Hermon. The Sidonim, the people of Sidon, called it Sirion, and the coming from the northwest, and the Amori coming from down here in Eretz Canaan, they called it Sinir. So again, is Moshe just a great tour guide? He never came here, but he knew of alternate names for the place. So presumably, again, Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, didn't visit the Hermon. So what is he telling us here? What is he telling the people then? What is he telling us now? So presumably, the Gemara in Sota says, right, Moshe Rabbeinu desperately wanted to come into the land. Right, the Gemara there suggests that he wanted to fulfill the mitzvot. So perhaps in this pasuk we're seeing that, as the Rambam says at the end of Hilchot Shuvah, al pi hade'ah tiyeh ha'ahava, that the more you know about, that knowledge is a reflection of love. And Moshe Rabbeinu apparently did his research, and before he was describing the places in Eretz Yisrael, he wanted to know about it. And he figured out that the Hermon was also a place that the Amori knew about and they cared about from their angle. And the Tzidonim cared about it from their angle. Presumably now we know a little bit about the Hermon. Nowadays we know that it's a very strategic location. And perhaps he was hinting at the fact that it was a place that different nations were interested in trying to capture. Maybe he was trying to tell the Jewish people in some subtle way that this is a place that would be strategic for you as well. And so that was perhaps an indication of that as well. But perhaps what he was telling them in both of these cases, both in terms of the names of the nations, in terms of knowing your history, and in terms of learning about the Eretz Yisrael, is al pi hade'ah tiyeh hava. Learn about the background of the nations you're going to encounter, about the land you're going to encounter, because al pi hade'ah tiyeh hava. Learn about where you're coming, so that you can then encounter it. And he didn't have the zchut, Moshe Rabbeinu lo zacha, but we have the zchut nowadays, standing here in Eretz Yisrael, to encounter these places, to know about them, and to engage with them, and hopefully we have that, take advantage of that zchut as we move forward. Have a Shabbat Shalom, and v'minyan Yerushalayim Nenucham.